sir, I think you have the wrong car.
You've emailed for an appointment 2 days in a row.
Tell me what's going on.
I've never seen a case like this before. 23 identities live in Kevin's body. Did something happen?
There's a flower on the pillows, a flower in the bathroom, like we're important. Who is that?
Maybe she can help us.
We're here! We're here!
Don't worry. He knows what you're here for. He's not allowed to touch you. He knows that.
My name's Hedwig. I have red socks.
How old are you?
9.
The human brain is the most complex object in the universe.
The only way we're getting out of here is if one of them decides to let us out.
Aren't you the clever one?
Hedwig, could you help us?
Okay. I have a window in my room.
Maybe you could show us.
Oh, that's here. Now it's closed. Now it's open. Did you think it was a real window? So you could leave?
An individual with multiple personalities can change their body chemistry with their thoughts.
Someone's coming for you.
What will happen when he unlocks the potential of his brain?
There is no limit to what he can become.
Tonight is a sacred night. You will be in the presence of something greater. The world will understand now. The beast is real.
He's done awful things to people, and he'll do awful things to you.
Hi, everybody, and welcome once again to GeekFest Rants. My name is Carlos Perron, and joining me this week, I have Kyle Perron. Say hi, Kyle.
Hi, Kyle.
Today, we are going to be hitting a movie we just recently watched, which I really didn't have any plans on watching it, but then little by little, when I started to kind of notice who was involved, it kind of piqued my curiosity, and then the positive buzz started forming on the internet about, this is a pretty good film. What I'm talking about is the movie Split, which is M. Night Shyamalan's latest directorial effort. Before we go into the actual film, little background on M. Night Shyamalan, and after we discuss the film, we're going to talk about his biography in terms of all the different films he's made and the big connection that we have, between this particular film and another film that he has done. But he was a director that he was pretty hot in the late 90s. And, he had a bit of a streak going with pretty good movies. And then he kind of started fading. Little by little, he started fading, and the films were not as successful. And recently, he's been kind of slowly creeping into having a sort of comeback. Little by little, very little by little. Up until now, where he might have, I don't want to say a blockbuster, but a mild hit on his hands. The movie is Split. Now, I first heard about this film because I saw a trailer where the star of the film, James McAvoy, seems to be playing, to me it looked like he was playing like different characters. But he's not playing different characters. He's playing the same character with basically different personalities. And it seemed to be some kind of maybe like a psychological thriller. That kind of seemed to be in the vein of where this film was marketed as. And then obviously when you throw M. Night Shyamalan's name on top of it, you're like, okay, wait a minute. Now we're dealing with something that's going to be a little different. Maybe there's going to be a weird twist ending, because that seems to be his signature piece to a lot of his films, is that trick, weird ending. So this particular film, right off the bat, it starts off with a couple of girls who seem to be coming out of a mall, possibly, getting in a car, and they're being driven home. They're about to be driven home by one of the girls' parents, when all of a sudden something happens and the parent doesn't get in the car. A different person gets in the car, and maces the girl with a spray. Could be mace, could be something to make them go to sleep. And the same thing happens to the third girl who's in the passenger seat. And James McAvoy playing this really weird character. And then little by little, we start to see where all this is going. The movie is told in almost, I think, something like 3 different time frames. One of them is obviously what's happening at the moment in terms of these girls are kidnapped. They're being kept in what looks like to be some kind of weird subterranean basement facility or something by James McAvoy. But then we also get to learn a little bit of the background of the lead girl, let's say, because even though there's 3 girls, there's one that's kind of like the lead. And we get to learn about her background, which is a little weird. She seems to be the weird girl in the group. In the beginning, I think they were in some kind of mall, but they were having like a birthday party, I think, and they invited her kind of like it was like a pity invite. Nobody really likes her, but she's kind of like the loner, quiet girl, and apparently she's got a weird family background or something of that nature. So we get to learn about her being out when she was much, much younger, in the woods with her father and her uncle. And they were the father was teaching her how to hunt and that sort of thing. And the uncle's a little weird. So this kind of gets peppered throughout the story in terms of what is happening to the girl or why she's so different than the other two. Now, Kyle, when you first started watching the movie, did you feel that it was going to go in different directions? Or did you think it was going to be just a straight kidnapping, rescue type of movie?
At first, I thought that too. And then when you were mentioning M. Night Shyamalan, then I was like, oh, okay. Because I always knew that his thing is big twists. So it's going to be something different. That was where I stood with that.
Okay. The first thing that really impressed me about the film was obviously James McAvoy. He's playing all these different characters. Now, we know from a different part of the film where we get to meet him visiting his psychologist or psychiatrist. It's this older lady that's treating him. And she has this thing where it's like he's apparently has something like 23 different personalities.
It was like 26, I think.
It was something like
27.
that. And we get to meet about 4 of them.
Well, no, because if you remember, there's the videos too. So we actually
well, the videos you see a little bit more.
We actually see about like 4 or 5, and then in the videos you see like another 10 maybe.
Right, but the different personalities that are interacting with the kidnap victims are primarily about 4 of them. There's the weird, quiet guy that kidnaps the girls in the first place. That's one personality. Then you have one that's like a little kid that kind of helps them along every now and then. Then there's a woman personality. But at some point you see others. There's one that's kind of like a fashion designer that is the one that visits the psychiatrist and she keeps trying to dig and like, why did you call me? Oh, I didn't call you. Everything's fine. So the psychiatrist starts to kind of figure out that one of his personalities has been trying to get in touch with her to tell her something's going on. Something out of the ordinary is going on because he's apparently somebody who's being treated for some mental condition that seems to be integrating back into the world in terms of him having a job. And she's asking, how's your work going? Work's going fine. People are nice and this and that and the other. He's kind of reassuring her of all the good things that are happening. But we know better than that because what's going on in his house. That he's doing something really weird with these girls. And he keeps the different personalities that are visiting these girls, they keep referencing to something that's coming. There's a new personality that's basically going to be taking over all the other personalities. And they refer to it as the Beast, which is kind of how you're being teased through the movie of what's coming. Something's coming, something's coming, something's coming. As the movie progresses, we get to learn more and more about the lead character, this particular girl who's the lead kidnap victim, let's say. And we find out that she is really pretty messed up on her own, and there's a reason why she's all messed up because it apparently had something to do with her uncle most likely molesting her in some shape or form in one of these hunting trips. And then after her father dies, her uncle apparently becomes her caregiver. She is basically made to go live with this uncle. So that gives you the whole background of why she's so weird. Now, what's cool is that they all try to figure out different ways of escaping, and they get pretty far at some points, but not far enough, and they keep getting caught. with one of these personalities that they're dealing with, this little kid personality, it's kind of like very friendly, very helpful. But the kid is terrified of the other personality, so they can't really interact that well with this personality. So it doesn't really work out. And it's a very tense situation that we have. Now, when the movie starts to turn is when we kind of realize that, okay, whatever this new beast thing that's coming, it's going to get here soon. And all these other personalities are kind of like making room for this thing that's about to happen. And he seems to be saving his prisoners for this beast thing. The psychiatrist at one point she starts to think something is really wrong here. Her patient is about to slip into something. So she starts to get very worried because she seems to be having these theories that she's, throughout the movie, she's sharing with like some kind of Skype call that she's making through like another school, like some kind of lecture circuit or something where she's explaining, how these different personalities are evolving. And it is possible that these different personalities can create things that normal people can't create. For example, one person could be allergic to something while the other personality is not. Some person can have a physical reaction to something or a physical condition while another personality will not have a physical condition. And she's theorizing that new personalities could have completely different traits that might even seem somewhat inhuman, that they could do certain things just because that particular personality believes they can do it. So that's when we kind of start going a little bit off the, wait a minute, this is not your normal kind of movie in terms of it's not a straightforward, psychological bad guy, kidnapper type of thing. So we get to a point where James McAvoy character is going through this change. Now, what's interesting is that throughout the movie, I start to notice locations, what you could call Easter eggs, references to previous M. Night Shyamalan characters and other movies. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's interesting. That's from that. That's just like in the other movie, and this movie, and that movie. And then finally he changes. And he changes in a way where he is physically becoming a different thing, a different person, not just a person, but a thing. His body is changing. He doesn't change to the extent where it's outrageous in terms of, he doesn't become twice as tall as he is. He doesn't become, 10 times as muscular as he is, but he does become somewhat more muscular. And he's able to, in one scene, he's like climbing walls because he's able to grab onto the surfaces of certain walls to be able to crawl through them. So this guy is really going through a pretty weird change, in effect, to be able, he's becoming like an animal. That's why I guess they was referred to as a beast. To be able to, in effect, consume his victims. In that struggle of when the psychiatrist comes over to kind of keep an eye, to kind of check on him, to see how off the rails he's gotten, she is basically killed because she's figuring it out. She's noticing things, and then she goes to the basement, I guess it is, the different part of the house where he's living or the location he's at, and I think she finds one of the girls is tied up down there. So before she can get away, he drugs her, just like he's drugged the other ones. And at some point she comes to and she starts scribbling down some information on a notepad, and she at one point also before that is able to unlock a door so it would be easier for her not to get locked in, for example. But eventually he finds her in this animalistic kind of form and kills her. So now we're back to, there's the three girls in the basement, the psychiatrist is dead, and he's ready to go there and do God knows what to them. And we find out through our main kidnap victim that what he's doing is, I think he's not necessarily devouring them, but he is killing them. He's eating them, more or less. He is chewing and biting them and killing them. So at that point, she's the one that makes the break for it because she has enough things that she's been working on at the time. She stole the screw and she was trying to get the lock open and this and that and the other. The first two girls are dead. She's the last one left, so it's basically one-on-one now. And the thing that the psychiatrist scribbled on a piece of paper was to call his real name. In other words, if she can call out his real name, his primary identity, that will at least buy her some time in order to be able to do something or get away in some shape or form. And she does that. By calling out his name, she's able to kind of distract him for a while to be able to get away. And his original personality comes out, realizes what's happening. He's like, oh man, it's happening again, that, all his bad personalities have taken over. And he basically tells her, there's a gun hidden over there. Go find the gun and kill me before all these personalities come back. So she's able to find this shotgun, and she is able to shoot him a few times, point blank, but he's in this beast form. And apparently when he's in this beast form, he's just somewhat bulletproof. He can handle a couple of shots.
Yeah, like it breaks the skin, but it doesn't go very far.
Right.
It's just a little spot.
Right.
It's just a flesh wound.
And it's because of that particular personality, this new personality that's completely new, and it's apparently completely in charge of every personality. So we get to the point in the film where he has her trapped, and she is completely cornered in a cell. She kind of locks herself in a cell, what looks like a cell. And he's bending the bars like Superman. He's bending those bars to try to get inside the cell. And then she notices that she has all these scars on her shoulders and on her legs and on her stomach. And he kind of makes a connection that she is as screwed up as he is, because that's when we get the rest of that background information on her having to do with her uncle abusing her.
And with him, where I guess his mom was abusing him.
Right, because apparently something happened in his family that the mother ended up beating him or something like that made him completely nuts. Now, the movie allows him to get away. She is rescued. The cops come and they find her, and she apparently was basically being kept at the basement of a zoo, which is where he was working. And that's where you get the connection of the animal connection. That's why he's always, his main personality seems to be an animal, this beast thing. So she is safely taken away. Then we get to see him in an abandoned building, kind of recovering from his wounds. And you can kind of tell that he's flipping again in personalities. He's back and forth, and he's returning to a more human kind of physique. And then we get, I don't know if you want to call it a stinger, because the movie basically ends, and we get the real twist of the story. You're in a diner, what looks like to be some kind of diner, and the people are talking about, they're watching TV and they're talking about, oh, this girl was rescued, that some maniac had her trapped, kidnapped her and killed a whole bunch of other people, blah, blah, blah. And somebody mentions, oh yeah, that reminds me of that case we had, I don't know how many, like 15 years ago or something, where there was that guy, Mr. Glass or something, and I'm like thinking, oh crap, wait a minute, now this is Unbreakable we're talking about here. And somebody says, oh, what was his name? Was something like that. Did they ever catch that guy or something? And then somebody from the counter who's sitting says that they were like, yeah, remember the guy who caught him? What was his name or something like that? And the guy says, oh, I think it was David Duran or something like that. And that guy ends up being Bruce Willis. Again, same character from Unbreakable. Which means that the twist of this film is that this is more or less a sequel to Unbreakable, and you're dealing with, once again, creating a comic book character, because basically McAvoy's character is a bad guy. He's a comic book bad guy. You're witnessing the origin story of another bad guy now. So now you have multiple bad guys in this world that Shyamalan has created, not necessarily interacting with each other, but kind of working parallel to each other in that same universe. And Kyle hadn't seen almost any of his films. He only saw one before we saw Split.
Yeah, I saw The Village first.
Yeah, but this I really enjoyed, not only because it's a good thriller. I mean, it works as a thriller and period. It's a thriller, fine. But then at the last minute or at the last chunk of the movie, linking it to another movie is something that I really enjoy when it's done right. And it's something that some directors have been trying to do, some more successful than others. The only one I could think of at this point is a little bit like what Ridley Scott did with Prometheus, because even though it is a prequel to all the Alien films, if you will, especially Alien, they're telling you a story within that universe, but it's not necessarily super connected. Obviously, it's much more connected. This one, you don't get the connection until the last 30 seconds of the movie, that these things are completely interlocked with each other. Now, let's go back a little bit and understand the progression of M. Night Shyamalan. His big hit, the movie that put his name on the map was The Sixth Sense. Kyle hasn't seen that one yet. That was with Bruce Willis. The one about searching, the ghosts and searching for a dead person and blah, blah, blah. That's the big, gigantic mega hit that he had that put him on the map and made him, Bruce Willis, it skyrocketed Bruce Willis's career that was already, he was out there, but now it made him even a bigger draw than that. Then that was followed by Unbreakable, which critically and financially, I don't think it was as successful as The Sixth Sense. Unbreakable came out at an unusual time. It came out in 2000, which is a time where the superhero films that we know today really hadn't started. This wasn't the Iron Man Marvel phase. This was close to the X-Men phase of comic book films, but he had decided to do a comic book film without letting you know it was a comic book film until the last minute, more or less. I mean, throughout the film, you're getting the idea that this guy has special powers and stuff like that. This is Bruce Willis I'm talking about. And then we get the twist with Samuel L. Jackson's character, Mr. Glass, about how he's orchestrating all these things just to be able to kind of flush out a nemesis in the form of Bruce Willis. And as a matter of fact, we just finished watching that right now. I don't remember how many times I've seen it. Kyle watched it for the first time. And What did you think of that one?
Yeah, it was really, really interesting. Like, I wish that there could have been a lot more like fighting in it, but obviously it's more meant to be a movie that makes you think rather than makes you like entertained, like a fight more like. But it was still really, I really liked it. It was really well done.
Yeah, that's the whole thing about Unbreakable, was that it removes almost all of the action from a stereotypical comic book film. If you look at a comic book film these days, I don't want to say they're all the same. I mean, a lot of people will probably tell you they're all the same, but they usually involve a lot of action, a lot of fighting, a lot of supernatural events, supernatural strength, gadgets and this and that. He tried to do a film about a supernatural theme, but tried doing it from a different perspective, more of a cerebral, if you will, type of thing of what a person goes through psychologically in realizing that they have powers and how to deal with these powers and how does your family deal with these powers. It's more of a serious film, which is different. Nowadays, obviously, your superhero films are super action oriented. And that movie, again, it was somewhat of a hit, if you will. It did make a reasonable amount of money, but it was no Sixth Sense. After that, he did Signs, which I guess you could kind of say it was the beginning of somewhat of a decline. Signs didn't get that good of a positive review. I believe that was with Mel Gibson was in it. It was about extraterrestrial creatures and UFO type of stuff, I think. Again, he tried to do his usual thing. It didn't work out. He did The Village after that, which I kind of like The Village. Again, they try to do a crazy twist at the end, and it is a typical Shyamalan twist.
Yeah, it was. I really liked it.
Where all of a sudden you realize you're not in the time frame that you think you are, and the twist is that the whole thing is taking place in the present. They're just in a place where they refuse to acknowledge, what's going on outside their village. Then he did Lady in the Water. That I think was a pretty big flop. I think it barely broke even, the movie, and that was more of a fantasy thing where there's this woman that lives in the water and comes out, and it's like almost like a fairy type of situation. Again, a very weird movie, but again, you're seeing a certain decline in the quality, at least. He did The Happening after that, which was kind of like, to me, it was kind of like Signs. It was a movie about, this one was about, wasn't it about bees or something? The bees are dying and people are killing themselves because they're hearing certain sounds or something. And this one was Mark Wahlberg, I think, was the lead. Again, I don't think it did that well. It was definitely not a hit, but whatever. And then came the movie that probably sealed his fate for a while, even though it made some money because it had to, and that is The Last Airbender.
Yeah, that was garbage.
That was based on the Avatar cartoon series, which at the time I think they couldn't call it Avatar because Avatar was coming.
Yeah.
James Cameron's Avatar, so they didn't want to confuse the two. And it was a complete, I don't know if you can call it fantasy, sci-fi kind of world, which completely was a mess. It was
Like, yeah, the original cartoon that was on TV, like, that was bazillion times better. It was great, and then they just screwed it all up with that movie.
yeah. And after that, he kind of slowed down a little bit. He produced a movie called Devil, which I kind of liked. And if anybody remembers it, it's about people trapped in an elevator, and one of them is a killer. But it's kind of like a supernatural movie. So it's really kind of smart. It's a small movie. He did not direct. He only produced it. That's one I would definitely recommend seeking out. Then after that, he tried another big, studio type of movie with After Earth. This was the one with Will Smith trying to locate another Earth, basically. Again, it wasn't as horrible as people made it out to be. It just wasn't that good either. It was like, okay, whatever. Nothing much there. Then 2015, he did a movie which this time around he directed. Once again, called The Visit. Now, The Visit, I recently saw it, I think on a DVD or on cable, I'm not sure. And it's not bad. It's not great either, but it's kind of like, oh, wow, that's pretty interesting. You can kind of guess the twist early on the movie. This is about a couple of young grandkids who are being sent off to hang out with the grandparents. And the grandparents turn out to be like really bizarre, weird acting people. And then at the end, you realize that, guess what? The grandparents are not the grandparents. They ended up with a whole bunch of different people that pretend to be their grandparents because the kids had never seen their grandparents before because they had a fight with them. The mother had a fight and stuff like that. Again, not a huge movie, but a kind of like what you could call the beginning of a comeback for this director. And then finally, now we have Split, which, as far as I'm concerned, it starts to definitely bring him back to hopefully being able to make some more good movies. This director has always been accused of being a one-trick pony. His thing was the thriller with the twist ending. Thriller with twist ending. You always get the twist ending at the end. Okay, fine. Okay, that's what he does. It's great when it works, and it's terrible when it doesn't work. So what we do know is that there's a possibility, I don't know how 100% confirmed this has been, that he does want to make an official sequel.
Yeah, I read somewhere that that's the next movie he's making, like 100%.
Yeah, I've read some stuff too, to Unbreakable. In other words, not just tippy-toe around the Unbreakable characters, but really go into those characters and see what's happening with that story.
Maybe they're going to do Bruce Willis versus the Horde,
That's a possibility.
Because that's what they call James McAvoy's character at the end.
That's the name they
Horde.
give him. The news gives him that name.
Yeah.
So it's a very comic bookish kind of name. So it's like, okay, that might work. Hell, you might even have Samuel Jackson come back as Mr. Glass in some shape or form.
Yeah, because he's in prison, they said.
Apparently he's still in prison or something.
Yeah.
But Bruce Willis seems to be still out there and not necessarily out in the open. The very quick shot of him that we got, it looks like he's kind of like in hiding. He's still kind of playing it quiet. But they did know his name. That's what's interesting.
Because he tipped off the police.
Right, and that's how they caught Mr. Glass.
They don't know that he has like superpowers. Probably. I mean, he's probably
probably.
They probably think he's if Dr. Glass keeps talking about it, they probably just think he's a total lunatic. So
well, the thing about Mr. Glass is that what's been happening, and part of the twist of Unbreakable, like I said earlier, is that apparently this character who has this disability that he's very fragile, he breaks bones like crazy, but he's a huge comic book fan and he understands and he likes the whole function of villain versus hero, opposites, people that are kind of opposites to each other. He apparently, what he was doing, he was orchestrating these disasters or these killings or these mass disaster situations in order to see if he could flush out a person that would survive these things unscathed, because he wanted to find the opposite of himself. And that's what happens at the end of Unbreakable, is that he finds all these headlines of all these world-related disasters where people are dying left and right. And, one person survives, a child survives, a boy survives, a man survives. So this has been something he's been working on for a very long time. And by helping Bruce Willis's character realize who he is, he's not doing it as a mentor. he's doing it as a villain, and he even explains it that
Yeah, at the end, he's like, they could be your best friend. And-
right. Well, he's
yeah.
saying you have the physical villain, the one that's physically against you, but then the best villain is the one that is your friend that you never suspect, that is really orchestrating everything against you, and that's who he wants to be. He is that character now. So it would be interesting now if you have Bruce Willis and you have James McAvoy as a new bad guy that Bruce Willis has to get involved with, and Samuel Jackson also there, either overseeing it or involved in
Or
what's
it's
happening.
they got to put something with that, like a cameo at least.
Right.
Or
And now, because this is the time where we have all these superhero movies, it wouldn't surprise me if somebody says, you know what, let's give it a shot, especially after Split, because Split, it's been doing really well in the box office. It's been number one, I think, a couple of weeks.
Like a lot of the kids at my school saw it, but they don't know anything about Unbreakable. They're like, I liked it, but I didn't understand what Bruce Willis was doing. I explained it to them.
That was the best part, because when we were watching it, and you only knew what I told you about Unbreakable, and I could hear the people at the end of the, first of all, in the theater we saw it, and just because of the nature of where we live, there was a lot of senior citizens, and I'm there going, why are these people watching this film? This is not their type of film. But you figure, okay, maybe there's a couple who want to see a scary movie. Okay, fine, whatever. So there's a scene in the movie where McAvoy is really changing, and then he starts to bite people and try to eat them or something. And you could hear the people around us going, wait a minute. What's going on here? You could feel them all like, what the hell did we just come to see?
What is this crap?
It's like, this is turning into something that
Where's my prune juice?
And all of a sudden, by the time we get to the end, I'm like having one of those fanboy moments of, oh my God, look at this, look at that. It's like when Rogue One, I was seeing all these Easter eggs, and I'm like, that's the thing from there, and that's the thing from there, and that's the thing from there. Well, Bruce Willis, they talking about Mr. Glass, and I'm like, oh crap, Mr. Glass. And then I'm like, God, that's Bruce Willis. That's the guy from the other movie. And that's the end of the movie. And people are walking out like, I don't know, I didn't understand the ending. It was just confused. I'm like, should I tell? I'm like, no, I'm not telling. You know what? No. If you don't take the time to research what you're watching, you're on your own.
That's why every time like a Marvel movie finishes and everybody starts walking out, I'm just like, no, you don't.
You don't deserve the extra scene if you're not patient enough to watch it. And we usually get a good maybe half of the theater whenever we see a Marvel.
Yeah, because people are starting to catch on to that.
Yeah, but it's still, there's usually a huge percentage of people that start walking out, and it's like, you're throwing money out the window. There's more to this. But anyway, with this film, I have a feeling most people, but that's nobody's fault, because they're not going to market this as a sequel or a standalone Unbreakable film, because most people have no idea what Unbreakable is. You have to be in the community. You have to know what these things are. And you have to know the history of a certain director who made certain films. But I do remember that around that time, I think, not everybody, but the comic book community, I don't want to say they completely embraced the film, but the fact that they're being brought in, and this is a movie about their characters, about their thing. It's funny because you're watching in Unbreakable and you see that Mr. Glass has all these framed comic books, and you see Thor, you see
Daredevil,
Shield, you see all these big, that nowadays you would never be able to put that on the wall because Marvel is so huge, they wouldn't want to share any of their art, in a public manner like that for somebody else's film. But that was pretty funny when people started walking out not knowing what they're talking about. But it's like, wow, that was a pretty good kick in the butt that they give you at the end of this one. So overall, I would definitely recommend it. It's definitely a genre film, and it makes it even bigger. In other words, it takes a film that a lot of people think it was an overlooked film. With Unbreakable, there's a different pace to it. It's a very slow pace. Like we said, it's psychological. It's a lot about the relationships. It's not an action film. With Split, it is more of an action film, if you will. It is more of a traditional person trapped in the house. How do we get out? How do we work together? That kind. So it does have a fast-paced feel to it. So It is different. You're definitely not going to get bored. And McAvoy steals the show. Here's an actor that is playing all these different characters, and I loved it. I love the fact that he can do all these different characters, and he's damn good at it. I mean, we're used to seeing him.
Yeah, that was like that's
films.
like Oscar-winning quality
You
stuff.
figure that,
Like, you can just see when he's transitioning into a different character, his entire facial structure just, like, you can see him, like, just trying to change his face into the role. Like, that's how good he does with it.
he does these. He has these tics. He has
Yeah.
these things he does with his eyes and his head. He won't look you in the eye. He will look. It obviously these are all acting tricks, but he's going through them in order
Yeah.
to find the specific personality that he's channeling at that moment.
Like, I think that's fantastic.
And in the future, if we do see this character again, remember we only saw about four or five personalities. We could have a lot more other personalities that he could introduce us to, on a future film. So, like I said before, definitely recommend it. I would definitely be also interested once the DVD comes out to see if there's any deleted scenes here, because I'm sure there were other parts of the movie or scenes that he's maybe acting. Maybe there are other characters that he did, but they got cut out of the movie. So I think it's definitely a thumbs up type of movie. What do you think, Kyle?
Yeah, it was really, really, really well done.
All right. Well, on behalf of everybody here, we would like to thank you for listening to us, and I'd like to thank Kyle for joining me today. So until next time, we'll see you soon here at GeekFest Rants. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
My name's Hedwig. I have red socks. He's on the move.
What?
He's on the move. Someone's coming for you, and you're not gonna like it. You guys make noises in your sleep.
Tell us.
I'm not supposed to say. But he's done awful things to people, and he'll do awful things to you.